So picture this. It's 1855.
Right.
And the United States, the House of Representatives, they need to pick a leader. Just single leader.
Which should be straightforward.
You'd think, but they ended up voting 133 times.
Yeah, that is
The
true.
chamber was completely deadlocked for weeks. I mean, today we're taking a look at the actual plumbing of democracy. Welcome to the deep dive. We are talking about the mechanics of voting in deliberative assemblies.
It really is the foundation, isn't it, of how groups make official decisions. Yet the actual rules governing that process, they are entirely constructed, completely man-made.
And constantly shifting, too.
Exactly. I mean, we usually just accept that a vote happens, but the machinery behind it, that dictates everything.
It really does. And we're pulling from a single comprehensive source for you today. It's a really detailed Wikipedia article titled Voting Methods in Deliberative Assemblies. And the history here is just wild.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Thomas Edison actually tried to automate Congress in 1869.
He did.
And he got completely shut down.
Which is such a great story. But yeah, the mission for our deep dive today is to explore exactly how groups arrive at decisions. We're going to trace the evolution of voting from ancient Roman wax tablets to the physical voting lobbies of the British Parliament and right up to the electronic scoreboards of modern legislatures.
Because when you look at this history, it becomes very clear that the method of voting, the actual how, is just as crucial as the vote itself.
It really is.
So let's get right into the foundational mechanics. If we look at Robert's Rules of Order, which is often called RNR.
Right, the baseline manual for parliamentary procedure.
Yeah, exactly. It defines what it calls the regular methods of voting, and the absolute most common is the voice vote, or viva voce.
It's the simplest and the fastest method available to any assembly. The chair basically just asks those in favor of a motion to say aye, asks those opposed to say no.
And they literally just listen.
They just listen. They estimate which side was louder in the room. And it's exclusively used for standard motions that only require a simple majority rule to pass.
But relying on who has the loudest voice seems, I don't know, incredibly flawed. Like a small group of people just yelling from their diaphragms could easily drown out a larger group of quiet people.
Oh, for sure.
So what happens when the chair just can't tell or gets it wrong?
Well, that's exactly when you move to the second regular method, which is the rising vote. It's officially called a division of the assembly.
Okay.
If the voice vote is inconclusive, or really if any member of the assembly formally challenges the chair's acoustic estimate by demanding a division, members have to physically stand up to be counted.
Which changes the dynamic of the room completely.
Totally.
You go from hiding in this collective chorus of voices to physically exposing your individual stance to everyone around you.
Precisely.
No.
And that's why a rising vote is also the mandatory standard method for any motion that requires a 2/3 majority.
Because you need the math to be exact.
Right. When the threshold is that high, you need absolute mathematical clarity, not a general auditory vibe. The chair can visually assess the standing groups, or they can order a strict numerical count.
There's also this ceremonial aspect to the rising vote that is really striking. Like when an assembly passes a resolution honoring a notable person or maybe memorializing someone who has passed away, the members will stand together.
Yes, that's a great point.
The physical act of rising lends this bodily weight of respect to the motion. It transforms a procedural check into a unified expression of consensus.
It's a powerful visual tradition. And then rounding out these basic methods, you have the show of hands.
Which you see all the time in smaller settings. Like if you serve on a neighborhood association or a corporate board, maybe a local PTA, you've used a show of hands.
You definitely have.
It's slower than a voice vote, but far more precise.
It removes the acoustic advantage entirely. The chair visually assesses or individually counts the raised hands. Every vote is weighted equally regardless of volume. But mathematically, a show of hands behaves very differently than a rising vote. It's actually not considered a full division of the assembly. And oddly enough, it tends to produce a significantly higher number of abstentions than a rising vote.
Really? Why do you think that is? Is it just laziness or something deeper?
It's likely psychological. Raising a hand is a half measure. It's much less physically committal than hauling yourself completely out of your chair and standing tall for everyone to see.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When the physical barrier to voting is lowered just slightly, the psychological barrier to abstaining drops even further. It's easier to keep your hand down than to remain seated while the rest of the room stands.
Wow. If you think about your own experiences in those boardrooms or PTA meetings, these regular methods are built purely for speed and efficiency, but they share one massive structural trait.
Which
They
is?
leave almost no paper trail. They are essentially unrecorded.
That is the critical trade-off you have to understand. A voice vote, a rising vote, or a show of hands, they prioritize keeping the meeting moving over strict accountability. There is no permanent public record detailing exactly how John Doe or Jane Smith voted. For a private club, efficiency is perfectly fine. But when you apply that to elected representatives making laws, that lack of a record becomes a severe democratic vulnerability.
And that brings us to the massive evolution in parliamentary procedure, the recorded vote.
Yes.
This is commonly known as the roll call, or taking the yeas and nays.
The entire purpose of the recorded vote is representative accountability. Robert's Rules explicitly states that taking a vote by roll call places on the public record exactly how every single member, or sometimes each delegation, voted.
So it's not a secret anymore.
Not at all. This method is almost exclusively confined to representative bodies where the proceedings are published.
It lets you, the constituent, check their work. You can look up the official journal and know with absolute certainty where your representative stood on a specific tax bill or zoning law.
Exactly.
Interestingly, the parliamentary guidelines specifically say you shouldn't use a roll call in a mass meeting where members aren't responsible to a broader constituency.
Right, because doing so defeats the entire purpose of a secret ballot. It forcefully drags everyone's personal choice into the open. Accountability requires visibility.
But visibility slows the machinery down.
It really does. Especially when a simple majority is required to elect an officer, but no one can seem to achieve it.
Oh, this is where the dry mechanics of voting violently collide with human stubbornness.
It gets messy.
Very. Let's look at how assemblies elect officers. In the absence of a special rule, a simple plurality, meaning just getting more votes than your opponents, isn't enough. You need a true majority.
Yes.
If no single candidate hits that threshold, the vote is technically of no effect. It's as if it never happened and the assembly just has to vote again.
And this is where Robert's Rules introduces a fascinating quirk regarding group psychology. Unlike modern instant runoff voting, where you automatically eliminate the person in last place after each round, the standard rules advise strongly against dropping the lowest performing candidates between ballots.
But wait, doesn't that just guarantee the process will drag on forever? Why wouldn't you want to trim the fat and force the room to make a decision?
Because of the center squeeze effect?
The center squeeze.
Yeah, the candidate currently sitting in last place might actually be the ultimate dark horse compromise.
Okay, walk me through that.
Picture a room bitterly divided between two extreme, stubborn factions. Neither side will ever concede and vote for the other's preferred leader.
Right, they're deadlocked.
But that one candidate hovering at the bottom of the tally with a handful of votes, they might be the only person in the room that both factions can eventually tolerate once exhaustion sets in.
Oh, wow.
If you automatically eliminate the lowest vote getter, you might be mathematically deleting the only true consensus choice.
But doesn't that just result in a room full of people settling for a mediocre leader no one actually likes?
Depends on how you define mediocre versus consensus.
Yeah.
In a deeply polarized room, the person half the room loves is usually the person the other half vehemently despises.
Fair point.
The dark horse isn't necessarily mediocre. They are the release valve for the deadlock. They represent the overlapping middle in a Venn diagram of two warring factions.
That makes perfect sense in theory. But when that deadlock doesn't break naturally, the system goes completely off the rails.
Oh, we have historical proof of that.
Look at the United States presidential election of 1800. Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr ended up completely tied at 73 electoral votes each.
A literal tie.
Because the Constitution requires a majority, the election was thrown into a contingent election in the House of Representatives.
Meaning the House had to step in and vote by state delegation to break the tie and choose the president.
Exactly. And it took 6 agonizing days of relentless debate and 36 separate ballots to finally elect Thomas Jefferson.
6 days.
36 rounds of voting for the highest office in the land.
It's an incredible test of constitutional endurance. But 36 ballots is a walk in the park compared to the House Speaker election of 1855 to 1856.
That 1855 Speaker election is the ultimate catastrophic example of the center squeeze failing to resolve itself.
It was a nightmare.
The chamber was so deeply fractured over the issue of slavery that they found themselves completely stuck. They voted 10 times, 50 times, 100 times. They were deadlocked for a mind-numbing 129 ballots.
Try to imagine the sheer logistical nightmare of keeping a government functioning while conducting 129 manual roll call votes. The frustration in that room must have been toxic.
Out of sheer desperation, they finally broke. They adopted a temporary plurality rule stating that if, after 3 more ballots, no one had a majority, whoever got the most votes on the next ballot would just be declared the winner.
They had to change the rules mid-game.
Just to survive it. Finally, on the 133rd ballot, Nathaniel P. Banks won. He secured 103 votes out of 214 total.
Which means, after all that pain, he was still 5 votes shy of a true majority. The mechanics of the absolute majority completely failed them, and they had to alter the fundamental rules of the chamber just to install a leader.
Sitting through 133 manual roll calls really makes you wonder why anyone puts up with verbal voting when technology exists to instantly count a room.
You'd think they'd want an upgrade.
Let's trace how that voting technology has evolved, starting way back in the various legislative assemblies of the Roman Republic.
The Romans were very active with their voting.
Deeply, physically active. Voting was preceded by a public meeting, and then citizens were corralled into roped-off areas. They were called forward in groups to physically walk across raised gangways.
A literal physical journey to vote.
At first, it was essentially an organized individual voice vote. A citizen stated his choice orally to an official who tallied it on a tablet.
But as the Republic matured, the Romans recognized the intense need to protect voters from intimidation by powerful elites. That led to the introduction of the secret ballot.
A huge shift.
And the technology of the era was incredibly tactile. A voter would take a stylus and etch their decision directly onto a small boxwood tablet covered in wax.
So cool.
They would then physically drop that completed wax ballot into a specialized voting urn.
The Romans called that urn a citella or a cista. The tactile nature of carving your choice into wax and dropping it into a box is such a visceral way to participate in government.
It really is.
Fast forward nearly 2 millennia from Roman urns to 1869, and we get a massive technological leap courtesy of Thomas Edison.
Good old Edison.
He filed a patent for the very first electric vote recorder. He took it to Washington, D.C., and proudly demonstrated the system to the United States Congress.
Given that Congress had suffered through 133 ballots just over a decade prior, you'd assume they would have eagerly adopted it to save time.
You would absolutely assume that, but
Yeah.
Congress completely rejected it. It wasn't a polite no. It was an absolute refusal.
They hated it.
In fact, over the next 84 years, 50 different bills and resolutions were introduced, trying to get some form of automatic or electronic voting system installed. All of them failed.
84 years of resistance.
It wasn't until the Legislative Reorganization Act of 1970 that electronic voting was finally authorized for the House of Representatives.
And even after authorization, it took until 1973 for it to be officially used. And initially it was just utilized to record a quorum call.
For those unfamiliar with the jargon, a quorum call isn't even a vote on a piece of legislation. It's just a procedural roll call to prove that the minimum required number of representatives are actually physically present in the building to conduct official business.
Right. They fired up this massive new electronic system basically just to take attendance.
So how does the modern system in the U.S. House actually function today?
Well, representatives can cast their votes at multiple stations located throughout the chamber. The system initially used punched plastic cards, but today they rely on magnetic stripe cards containing their unique ID information.
Like a credit card.
Exactly. They insert the card into the station and press one of 3 buttons: green for yay, red for nay, or amber for present.
And the moment they press the button, it's public. Their vote updates on these massive summary panels positioned right above the press gallery seats.
Instantly visible.
Their name lights up green, red, or amber for the whole room and the public to see. Most votes are held open for a 15-minute window, with a massive countdown clock ticking away.
But the rules governing that 15-minute window are very strict regarding changing your mind.
Oh, you can't just flip-flop constantly.
No. If a representative wants to flip their vote during the first 10 minutes, they simply reinsert their card and press a different button. However, if they have a sudden change of heart in the final 5 minutes of that window, they lose their electronic privileges.
Which means they have to do what amounts to a congressional walk of shame.
Pretty much.
They must physically walk down into the well of the House and manually use a teller card.
A teller card is just a physical paper slip used to officially register a vote. The tally clerk then has to manually override the electronic system to enter the changed vote.
It's a brilliant way to build friction into the system to discourage last-minute chaos on the floor.
It forces them to be deliberate.
What's even more surprising is that Congress was incredibly late to the technology party. State legislatures beat the federal government by decades. The Wisconsin State Assembly installed an electronic voting system way back in 1917.
1917. That's incredible. Texas follows shortly after, adopting one in 1919, and the Virginia House of Delegates installed theirs in 1923.
Today, about two-thirds of state legislative bodies utilize electronic voting systems. And they use them for so much more than just counting yeas and nays.
They're fully integrated.
These sophisticated systems are heavily integrated into the machinery of government. They are linked directly to the production of the official legislative journal. They automatically manage the daily calendar, and they even control the debate timers on the floor.
The entire workflow of the legislature is digitized for maximum efficiency. But the march of technology isn't universal.
No, it's not.
There are highly prominent deliberative assemblies that categorically reject this modernization, clinging fiercely to the raw physicality and tradition of the past.
The United States Senate is the glaring example here. The Senate completely rejects electronic voting. They do not use magnetic cards, and there are no massive digital scoreboards on the walls.
No screens anywhere.
They rely entirely on the voice vote, the division vote, and the traditional verbal roll call.
And the Senate's verbal roll call is notoriously slow and deliberate. The clerk calls the roll of all 100 senators alphabetically by name. Each senator must individually verbally respond when called.
It takes an incredibly long time, and there is a very specific rule governing how they're supposed to do this, the desk rule.
The desk rule.
Passed in 1984 as Senate Resolution 480, it created a standing order that every single senator is actually required to cast their vote while standing at their officially assigned desk.
But in daily practice, this rule is almost comically ignored.
It really is.
On a typical Tuesday afternoon, senators mill around the chamber, chatting in small groups and loudly casting their votes from wherever they happen to be standing, while the clerk tries to track them all down.
But they don't ignore it when history is on the line. For deeply solemn historic votes, the Senate Majority Leader will actively enforce the desk rule.
They rein everyone in.
The Senate Historical Office tracks these moments closely. They force every single senator to return to their assigned desk, sit down, and vote from their designated spot for monumental events, like the passage of the Affordable Care Act, Supreme Court confirmation votes, or votes on articles of impeachment.
By enforcing the physical constraint of the desk, the Senate uses its own architecture to signal the immense gravity of the moment. You aren't just casually agreeing to a routine budget tweak while talking to a colleague. You are anchored to your designated spot, fulfilling a heavy constitutional duty.
The physical restriction elevates the seriousness of the act.
It changes the entire atmosphere of the room.
If we're talking about using physical space and architecture to enforce the gravity of voting, we have to look across the pond at the UK Parliament in Westminster.
Oh, Westminster is fascinating.
The drama there is literally built right into the floor plan. At the close of a debate in the House of Commons, the Speaker puts the motion by just asking the room for a basic voice vote. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
The room shouts.
Of the contrary, no, the room shouts back.
But if that acoustic estimate is unclear, or if literally any member challenges the result, the Speaker initiates a formal division by shouting, "Clear the lobby."
That phrase alone is incredible. Clear the lobby. It triggers division bells to start ringing loudly all across the entire parliamentary estate,
Warning everyone that a vote is happening.
Any member of parliament anywhere on the grounds knows they have exactly 8 minutes to get to the chamber and physically separate themselves. They must walk into one of 2 actual physical rooms called division lobbies.
Literal room.
If you vote aye, you walk into the lobby to the Speaker's right. If you vote no, you walk into the lobby to the Speaker's left.
Think about the intense psychological pressure of that system. You cannot quietly push a dissenting button at a desk while looking at your phone. If you are voting against your party's agenda, you have to physically stand up, look your party leaders in the eye, and walk past them into the opposing room.
That is brutal.
The mechanics of the vote deliberately maximize peer pressure. As they walk through these lobbies, clerks manually record their names and tellers count them. After exactly 8 minutes, the doors are locked.
The House of Lords follows a very similar procedure, though they use the words content and not content instead of I and no, and their starting command is clear the bar instead of clear the lobby.
We do have to acknowledge the massive disruption caused by the pandemic, though. COVID-19 forced even Westminster to bend its oldest traditions.
True, everything had to adapt.
For a temporary period in 2020, the UK Parliament actually sat virtually and conducted electronic virtual divisions. While the House of Commons has since returned to physical voting, though they now scan their passes electronically as they enter the physical lobbies to speed up the count, the House of Lords actually kept electronic voting permanently.
They use a smartphone app to vote now.
An app.
But in an incredibly British compromise, members of the Lords are strictly required to be physically present inside the Parliament estate in order to use the app.
They digitized the button, but they staunchly retained the geographical boundary.
They couldn't let go of the physical space completely.
Exactly. So to synthesize this journey for you, whether a deliberative assembly is relying on the quick acoustic estimate of shouting I, swiping a magnetic card in a computerized terminal, enduring a 133rd consecutive manual roll call, or physically marching into a designated room based on your political stance, these methods are far more than just dry administrative bureaucracy.
They're the actual levers of power.
The specific rules of voting actively dictate the speed of government, the level of transparency afforded to the public, and in cases of deep division, the ultimate outcome of the decisions that govern our daily lives.
It completely reframes how you look at something as seemingly mundane as a show of hands at a local meeting.
It really does.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We spent a lot of time today talking about how the recorded vote creates vital accountability for representatives, forcing their choices into the public light.
The necessity of the public record.
But contrast that with how you and I vote in a general election. We demand absolute, unbreakable secrecy for the citizen, the secret ballot, to protect us from coercion, intimidation, or bribery.
Right.
Yet we demand radical, open transparency for our elected representatives. As we continue to digitize and expose every single granular action our representative takes on the floor, does that extreme transparency actually invite a different kind of coercion?
That's a huge question.
When every single vote is immediately public, are we freeing representatives to vote their conscience on behalf of their constituents, or are we just making it incredibly easy for well-funded lobbyists and extreme political factions to monitor, threaten, and punish them for ever daring to compromise?
It is the ultimate paradox of representation. The very transparency designed to protect the voter might be the exact mechanism that paralyzes the legislature from actually getting anything done.
Something to think about the next time you see a legislative scoreboard light up on the news. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep examining the hidden machinery of the world around you, and we will catch you on the next one.